Hi, I'm Nicole France, Research VP and Principal Analyst covering all things customer experience at Constellation Research. Welcome to episode 5 of Constellation Research TV, where Constellation's analysts take you through all the latest news, trends, and notables in the world of enterprise technology. We've got a great show for you today, don't we, Doug?
Yes, and I am Doug Henshin, Principal Analyst covering data decisions. And we're the anchors for this episode. Joining us later in the show will be our colleagues Ray Wang, Holger Mueller, Steve Wilson, Liz Miller. And in every episode, you'll hear from our analysts, our community of business transformation leaders, cutting-edge vendors, as well as other influencers.
As always, we'll start off by running down the latest news in our research coverage areas, and then we'll hear from Doug in depth on his latest research report.
And then next, Ray Wang will share a Tech Executive Fire chat on 2021 IT trends. And we'll follow that with our inaugural episode of Pet Peeves, in which Nicole, Holger, Steve, Liz, and I will share our respective beefs about lamentable tech industry jargon. So Nicole, what's new in your world this week?
Well, we've had a couple of recent announcements that suggest there's something of an arms race going on. Maybe a vaccine race is a better way of describing it. But both Salesforce and ServiceNow have made big announcements about their COVID vaccine support systems. And I think what's really interesting about these is that in both cases, we're talking about some fairly comprehensive offerings that are really trying to tackle the complete end-to-end set of interactions that are required in order to actually distribute vaccines effectively. I mean, we're talking about everything from integrating with supply chain all the way through to the interactions with individual patients, managing the disbursement of those vaccines to the various agencies and pharmacies and doctors' offices, I mean, even dentist offices potentially, that are going to be responsible, if they aren't already, for helping to distribute these vaccines. Now, these guys aren't alone. I mean, there are announcements from Oracle, from Workday as well. What's really interesting is that there's this very big play in the market for how broad-based, in my view, these offerings really can be. Who they're ultimately selling to is kind of a big question, because there are a whole lot of different players in there. And for these visions to really be fully realized, we're going to have to see a lot of those players buying into the same systems, which is realistically not all that likely to happen, but who knows?
Well, it's great if they can be part of the solution, if it works. There's also a risk. A certain system integrators a name came up this week in a very negative light tied to the vaccine rollout. So publicity is not always a good thing, so long as they spell your name correctly.
It's true. And, you know, I think the real win here will be for the players who manage to establish themselves in really that sort of back office to customer facing or patient facing set of operations, that really extended kind of full length process, if you will. And that's really, I think, the bigger win here, as opposed to actually selling these vaccine packaged offerings per se. So we'll see where the vaccine arms race leaves us. The other interesting bit that it's hard not to mention is, of course, the big news that Jeff Bezos is stepping down at Amazon, and your buddy Andy Jassy is jumping in, right, Doug? You've got a few points of view on that, I know.
Well, my sense of that announcement was that Bezos will no longer be CEO in the same way that Larry Ellison is no longer CEO of Oracle, but you really know who's in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And I think it says a lot that the anchor of power, as it were, within AWS rests, or within Amazon really rests with AWS. So that will undoubtedly play out in some fascinating and important ways for the whole company.
Yeah, AWS is definitely the tail that wags the dog. 52% of Amazon's operating income is tied to AWS. So Jassy will my sense is that Jassy will keep running AWS, and he'll have lieutenants reporting up to him on retail, streaming, the device businesses, et cetera.
Yep. And I guess we'll all just wait to find out whether government regulation plays a hand in anything that happens over the next couple of years as well. But Doug, what else is happening in your world?
Well, the theme I keep hearing about is the evolution of lakes and warehouses. I plan on publishing a market overview on this topic in Q2. Some call it lake house now. The idea is that the two are converging, the lakes and the warehouses. Is certainly going for simplification. You have Microsoft, which last year introduced Synapse. You have Snowflake, which does a lot of storing of raw data and then does the transformation of data in the warehouse. They're adding support for unstructured data. You have federated query offerings. Starburst has a big event. It's Data Nova event this week. You have Dremio, lots of players. And then last week, $1 billion funding round for Databricks. That tells you about the value and importance of this segment of the data industry. They also announced availability on GCP. They already had availability on AWS and Azure. So it's a very hot area, big data without the pain of that first generation of big data solutions.
Well, I can tell you just from looking at my world, all things customer experience, there is no doubt about it. Customer data is the single biggest pain point and source of value at the same time. So it's certainly the case that solving these data challenges, particularly when it comes to customer data, are paramount for customer success in the digital age, or for company success, really. So I think the big valuations here and the big investments hopefully will pay off, because let's face it, these are still big, long-standing, dare I say, intractable challenges that companies have been grappling with for a long time, and I don't think anyone has really yet completely cracked the nut.
Yeah, and the other news that keeps sticking in my head that I keep thinking about was the earth-shattering news last week that GM announced that its intention to go all electric vehicles by 2035. That was underscored again this weekend with the Super Bowl and their ad campaign with Will Ferrell. You have to wonder if they're kind of dancing to China's tune. I've read some research to that effect. Beijing also has an edict of EVs by 2035. It's now the largest car market in the world. More concerning, China has a big advantage in electric motor manufacturing, in rare earth resources, and in battery manufacturing. So is our auto manufacturing sector in for yet another blow? It's a real question, and it'll definitely be a big impact on the tech sector and the economy in general.
It definitely has big implications. And it's kind of ironic that not too long ago, in the US at least, we were talking about rolling back vehicle emission standards. Now we're jumping fast forward to electric vehicles in a short time frame. And I think there are some really big questions, because there's an assumption that electric vehicles are better for the environment. But as you said, touching on the rare earth metals issue, these are not nice things to extract from the planet. So battery technology still has a major, major role to play in actually determining how effectively, how environmentally friendly these things are, and how quickly we can actually get to some of those goals. So it'll be interesting to watch, without question.
Have to make
well,
it
now
renewable.
I think, Doug, we want to turn. What's that?
Have to make it renewable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the cradle to cradle, not just cradle to grave, isn't it? Now, Doug, I think it's time to switch gears and learn a little bit more about what you've been focusing on lately. Let's get an in-depth view on why planning platforms are so critical to business agility. So tell us more.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's an old maxim, but it bears repeating. I'm Doug Henschen, Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, and my latest report explores the advantages of modern planning platforms. Now, this research is relevant not just to CFOs, but to any financial planning and analysis, or FP&A professional. Now, some are calling them XP&A professionals because planners don't just do financial planning. They help lead subsidiaries and business units, and they help guide sales, marketing, supply chains, and human capital management. And here's a summary of the 7 reasons detailed in my report on why it's important to move to a modern planning platform. Reason number 1, it's essential to spend time on the right tasks. Organizations using spreadsheets and email instead of a planning platform spend as much as 20% of their time collecting data and 30% validating. Planning platforms help you flip that script so business leaders can focus on higher value activities such as what-if scenario planning, more frequent analysis, coordination of financial and operational plans, and proactive action. Reason number 2, planning platforms help you build better plans and set stretch goals. They help you tie strategic imperatives to short and long-term financial and operational plans and goals. They help you identify the resources required to meet goals, including people, material, and capital. They help you set key performance measures and targets. And they help you do what-if scenario planning, detailing base case, best case, and worst case outcomes so you can make contingency plans and proactively act before it's too late. Reason number 3, planning platforms help you integrate financial and operational plans. Financial plans are more realistic and achievable when they are coordinated with operational plans. For example, financial goals can't be met if sales plans are not in sync with the revenue expectations, or if required human resources are not available to execute on the plan. What's more, the best planning is achieved by the people who are closest to the business unit or department, so planning capabilities should extend beyond the Office of Finance. Reason number 4, planning platforms help you frequently analyze and forecast as conditions evolve. Frequent planning, monitoring, analysis, forecasting, and replanning based on the latest conditions makes the difference between proactive course correction and too little, too late reactive management. Reason number 5, using spreadsheets for planning and forecasting is like predicting the weather using an old-fashioned barometer. A modern planning platform gives you all the advantages that today's weather forecasters get from powerful computer-based modeling and Doppler radar. Predictive capabilities are only getting more sophisticated and powerful, with AI and machine learning-based features that can detect anomalies and help with sales and workforce planning. Reason number 6, planning platforms help you keep the books and report results. Now, modern CFOs are more focused on defining business strategy and guiding execution, but they are still responsible for closing the books and reporting on the financial condition of the business. This is where consolidation, disclosure, and statutory reporting capabilities come in. Now, these aren't strategy or plan-driving aspects of modern platforms, but they are must-have capabilities, particularly for large public corporations. And finally, reason number 7, modern cloud-based planning platforms can be deployed fairly quickly without disrupting the business. Now, these SaaS offerings are invariably subscription-based, offering both lower initial cost and lower cost per user than legacy systems. That's important for deployments that extend beyond the Office of Finance to planners within line of business units and departments. Time to value varies depending on the size and complexity of the deployment, but tactical use cases can get going in as few as 4 to 6 weeks, while company-wide rollouts at mid-sized companies can be completed in as little as 6 to 9 months. Now, I'll close with the observation that people and culture changes may be the biggest impediment to building a modern, planning-driven organization. Now, to be agile and proactive, your organization will need business-savvy and business-focused leaders, not just financial expertise. Accountants focus on history and compliance, whereas proactive CFOs and FP&A professionals focus on the future and what's driving the business. This is Doug Henschen of Constellation Research, wishing you the best of success in 2021 in building a responsive and collaborative planning culture.
Thanks for that, Doug. And now let's turn to Ray Wong, who's interviewing Broadcom Senior Vice President Greg Lotko and discussing IT trends in 2021.
What is the future of IT? Where is it heading? What's driving decision-making? To help answer this, I'd like to welcome you to the first of a 2-part series where I sit down with Greg Lotko, SVP and GM, Broadcom Software, where we cover this and more.
Hi, I'm Ray Wong with Constellation Research, and I'm here today to talk about the future of IT trends. We're with Greg Lotko, the SVP and GM of Broadcom, and he's had 30 years of experience in both IT, business, and software. What's going on?
Hey, how you doing? It's good to see you. Yeah, I've been working with some of the largest enterprises in the world. It's been a lot of fun.
You know, it's been a while since I've seen you. A lot has changed, and we're now looking towards the future. What do you think?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, everybody has to remember it's all about business first, right? There's gonna be the next new technology, the next wave, the thing that everybody thinks, hey, this is the panacea and this is what we're gonna migrate to, and it's gonna have value, whatever that is, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't rise to some sort of predominance or awareness. But business first, what's the outcome you're trying to drive? What's the capability that you're trying to deliver? There's going to be a laser focus on that. You think about the efficiency we need to drive in this industry overall. I think that the past and history always informs the future, right? When people think about the future, they want to look into that crystal ball and find out what that next big thing is. What's that next greatest technology? But if you look back through history, and our space in history, our technology is all around IT, right?
We're seeing lots of things happen, right? Agile DevOps, skills, security, right? Automation is hot. Let's start with Agile.
Right. So Agile, as it's come out and as it's evolved, it started being associated with a particular technology, right? It was the way that you were going to do your work with these new technologies and interact. But the reality is what we've seen across organization, that Agile methodologies have been exploited across IT as well as other business models, right? Even producing the physicality of things, the idea of fail fast, learn as you go, it's gone across technology.
It is, and we see that all over the place. It's not just the tech teams that are doing Agile DevOps. You've got everyone there. You've got the legal team, you've got the finance team, you've got the QA, of course, those guys are always there, and you got everyone hopping in.
You've got the person that's cutting your hair, right? You go in with long hair, they cut it to about 3/4. You go, I don't like that. They go, we'll evolve, we'll cut it half. Before you know, you either have a crew cut or a flat top.
Yeah.
But you learn as you go.
You learn as you go. You don't do that again. No, but that's the thing, right? We're working really fast. It's the iterations and the cycles. We saw how important that was over the last 6 months, right? The ability to actually pick up a team, get started, get going, get it out the door.
Minimal viable product, right?
MVP is important. With the regulatory environment, like there's like, oh, what regulatory environment? Boom, let's just get it out there, figure out if it works, and come back and adjust as we need to.
Part of it is the idea of making a decision, deciding what you need to do, and that really goes to the core of the business value, knowing that you have to do it, and then saying, well, I know there's got to be a way, and figuring it out after the fact, right? Like the stimulus payments. Hey, we're going to do stimulus payments. And then everybody were like, well, can our systems handle this? We've never done it at this volume on this short of a time period. But you look at what everybody did. Agile development. They went back into their systems. They said, hey, this is a little bit nuanced. Here's what we got to do. And governments around the world made it happen.
We got good at getting 90% right much more quickly. And that helps. Getting those iterations, if you look over the period of time, it would have taken about 2 years to get something out the door, but no one had 2 years to wait.
Right.
And this is really what we're saying all across the board. Agile's changing our business models. And it doesn't matter what technology you're using. It's pretty cool. But what about skills, right? What type of skills have you seen popping up? What's important?
Well, when you think about skills, I think the overriding theme that's come out is everybody talks about continuously renewing their skills, continuously investing in their own personal skills. So you see more and more folks not focused into one individual discipline. They're learning about different things so that they can be more flexible and have more breadth. But then in that learning, you see them pick up skills, just like we talked about with Agile. They pick up that skill and then they apply it to a new domain that maybe somebody didn't imagine for that space. Think about open source technologies, originally developed around applying to a particular technology or a database or data construct, that then you use those same technologies to maybe start doing automation or something else in your operation, right? I mean, remember there was the whole day of the command line interface, right? And then everything was going to go to a web interface and a GUI and an online GUI that you could use from anywhere. And what is everybody using today? We've come back. They're using command line interfaces. Why? Because they're fast, they're efficient, they're direct.
But here's the interesting thing with skills, right? We're adapting, right? Sometimes those skills, especially in a language, are applicable in another language, applicable across different platforms. And that's what's getting exciting. Just like we're doing Agile development, we're picking up skills on the fly. And this is, can you believe it? We're down to microservices calls now. We don't even need a GUI. So we get to that point. Now, what about security? Because one of the biggest things we realized is how important security is and how little of it we have.
Right, because everybody's connecting from everywhere, right? And from different places that they had been before. So folks have had to simultaneously figure out how to open up their environments to allow access from different points, yet keep everything secure. And really, that's the balance that you want. You don't want to block off or close your environments from those that need to interact with it, but you want to make sure that they're doing the things that they should be doing and that they're who they say they are.
And who they say are. That identity piece becomes so important because the number of attack surfaces is crazy, right? They're coming in. I mean, how do you really know it's like Joe in the back end when he's typing on the other end? We don't know until you actually have some kind of measure. So that takes us to the other piece, the big driver, automation. What do you think we're going to head with automation?
Automation is more than just, figuring out, hey, I'm going to do this at this particular time, the routine of the day. It's about the awareness and the cognitive awareness, right? Of seeing situations that are happening, seeing the things that are happening simultaneously, and then knowing what the appropriate action is to that. Now, you're not going to always recognize every pattern. You're not going to necessarily have program for all that. We have intelligent software nowadays that if you talked about this scenario and this scenario, the technology can figure out how to combine those. But you also have to add the human learning into the equation, right? So there's going to be times where the automation is not going to know what to do, and you want it to be able to learn. So you want to be able to inject into that, hey, here's what I see, here's the additive piece, and here's the result, here's the action I want you to drive the result.
That makes a lot of sense, right? So when you think about like automation in general, what we're actually headed towards is almost like autonomous vehicles. There's 5 levels. Right? The first one is, basic automation. That's kind of where we thought we were before. The second one is we're starting to get like the cruise control going, but there's still manual intervention if something happens. Step on
but the cruise controls are adaptive now, right? I mean, the car will slow down and keep the gap and all that kind of stuff. It's a little smoother so your spouse in the car doesn't feel you slamming on the brake.
That's what the autopilot does. The third level is really thinking about what happens like when the machines will actually intervene before the humans will, right? They automatically jump in because like you weren't fast enough, the brake kicks in, so you don't hit the person behind you or the person in front of you. And then we're going to get to the point where it's running on its own, right? It's fully autonomous, right? And humans are optional, right? And then the last level is like you don't even need the human. So we got a long way to get there, but
but that's no fun. That's just a bunch of autonomous cars driving around on the highway with nobody going to work. What's the point?
The point is you had a great night and you have to get home.
Yeah, but you're putting the human back in the car. I'm fine with that part.
That's true. There's going to be a fleet of cars rolling around.
Just driving around.
Anytime
now, if I could send my car to the supermarket and I didn't have to go.
Just do pickup.
There you go.
There's pickup.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or you could wake up on your commute and be there. So you could live like 100 miles out and you wake up ready for work.
I don't know.
So anyways, that's automation.
As you can tell, the future is here. It's happening. Automation, open source, cloud. But what are the implications in a complex world of changing business priorities? How does IT deliver the most value across a wide range of platforms and architectures? Stay tuned as Greg and I explore further in part 2 on our episode of Constellation TV.
As analysts, one of the things that we have an awful lot of are pet peeves. Yep, you guessed it, the terms that we hear all the time that either don't mean anything, get horribly misused, or really just rub us the wrong way. So here is, to kick us off, my first pet peeve, and that is second-party data. You hear this term a lot when it comes to customer data, and quite honestly, I've almost never heard it used correctly. So first-party data belongs to the business that is collecting information about all of the customers that it interacts with. Third-party data is data that they buy in from outside parties, people who aren't involved in that business transaction between seller and customer. Well, second-party data, that's the customer's data. That's what they keep for themselves. It does not mean data from a different division within your business. It does not mean data from a different system other than the one you're trying to integrate it into. It doesn't even mean data that comes from a partner. So if you really want to keep this pet peeve from totally getting to me, do 2 things. 1, read the blog post I wrote about it. And 2, just don't use it, because chances are you're probably not going to use it correctly. It's not just a placeholder. All right, let's see what we have up next.
Hey everybody, it's Holger Müller from Constellation Research, here to talk about some of my pet peeves, starting with engagement. You hear all this talk about engagement, how it's important, how it leads to better results in companies and so on. But do you remember when it used to be called motivation? Leaders have to motivate people to do and perform their job. It's not about what any kind of software can do to make people feel engaged and be somewhere or do something. right? Think about some questions never come up. We never hear this statement of, oh, our salespeople aren't engaged. They're not going to visit and call customers. No, if they're not motivated, what do? You fix the compensation system. Or you hear, oh, our customer service people are doing such bad service because they're not disengaged. What do? Maybe not right, but you fire them because you have the metrics. Or you hear, our IT people are not engaged. What can we do? Well, maybe give them the tools or create the operating system to make a difference. And that is really the key thing. People are motivated when they're empowered by their leaders, when they feel there's a contribution to what they do in their enterprise. That leads to motivation, that leads to ownership. And one of the other words I want to talk about, belonging, but that's a different video. Right? So engagement cannot be created by software, especially not by software which is just a tiny, tinsy little thing like checking in, checking out at the end of the day, how your workday was or not. That's not measuring engagement. On the downside of however, that software can always ruin motivation because it makes people their lives hard and doesn't allow them to do the job of their company, of their team, of their purpose, which they want to pursue for that. So there's a few vendors who can do something about this because we spend significant amounts of time about this, right? And those vendors are alphabetically Apple, Google, and Microsoft. And ironically, on the day I record this, Microsoft launched Viva. So there might be a shot of Microsoft determine a little bit about the motivation, not the engagement of people, but that remains to be seen. But don't be fooled. Software cannot create engagement. People do.
Hi, Steve Wilson. I cover digital safety and privacy at Constellation Research. My pet peeve? Zero trust. There's an old Italian motto that I do like, that it's good to trust, but it's better not to. But it starts to sound like a piece of bumper sticker wisdom or a political credo. Is it just the precautionary mindset that we should all have? People use zero trust as if there's more to it than that. So let's unpack it. Security is famously a tripod. It's based on people, process, and technology. The clearest example is banking. Banking rests on secure networks, hardware security modules in the ATMs, trained tellers, audits, security compliance, people, process, technology. In many situations, we have what's called a trusted position. These are sysadmins or super users. They have the power of God. There's a single point of failure with these trusted positions, so we subject them to security clearances. In really critical situations, we have two-person control. Famously, of course, the nuclear missile silo. More mundane, the corporate check account requires two signatories. So can we really ever do without people and process? Surprisingly, the answer is yes. There's one security system that I'm aware of that keeps its security promise without people and without process, and that's Bitcoin and similar cryptocurrencies. Now, people are going to nitpick and say, well, look, you have to trust the software development, don't you? Maybe not if you can trust the open source quality control process. You have to trust assumptions. You have to trust the assumption that there's always going to be 50% trusted nodes in the network. So with all of this fine print, I have to say that zero trust is almost meaningless. You have to trust what people really mean. And that's my mindset. I don't trust slogans.
Hi, this is Doug Henshin, data decisions analyst at Constellation Research. And my pet peeve is on premises. First of all, 9 times out of 10, people get it wrong and say on premise. A premise is the basis of an argument. So on premise is just wrong. If you say premises, you're talking about a tract of land with a building on it. But let's think about that for a moment. The typical enterprise has many premises, and headquarters is probably dozens, if not hundreds or even thousands of miles from the company's one or more data centers. Saying you can deploy it on premises seems to quaintly suggest that the CIO can run downstairs and hug the server, when in fact they may have no idea which remote or quite possibly third-party managed data center their software actually runs in. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. Public cloud providers have premises too, and that's where they deploy software. They just happen to have bigger premises and many more premises all around the world than the typical enterprise. Instead of talking about premises, we should simply explain whether technology is available as software or as a service. If it's software, you can deploy it in one or more private data centers. But does it really matter whether they're your premises or those of a third-party provider? Software can also be deployed on any public cloud. And these days, you can also specify which point of presence, aka premises, you want it to run on to meet data residency requirements. Now, if it's only available as a service, the question for some companies then becomes, is it multi-cloud? What they're really asking is, Does it run on Amazon's premises and Microsoft's premises and Google's premises? Let's just forget about premises.
Liz Miller here. Pet peeve. Snackable content. Two words that don't belong together. The concept of snackable content, I'm actually totally okay with. It's that idea that our customers are going to wherever we put things and they're taking little bites based on what they feel like eating today, right? So some days they want a pretzel. Some days it might be the leftover pizza. Some days it might be something wholesome and natural, a little piece of fruit. But it's the customer deciding what the flavor of the day is and then going and taking bites of what they want. They're snacking, they're grazing, it's great. But somehow we took the idea of snackable content and actually turned it into something that meant taking something really, really big and turning it into little tiny pieces so we could iterate and reuse and make things that were identical to each other, just a lot smaller. The problem with that is we totally ignored the fact that our customers were actually going and deciding what flavors they wanted, not what size. So let's all stop doing snackable content. It's painful on the ears, it hurts my soul, and it's one of my pet peeves. Second pet peeve, close tie, people who use the word anyways. It's not a word. Stop using it.
Oh, I love that pet peeves. Thank you, Liz, so much. Anyways, just saying we have a lot to look forward to in episode 6, hosted by Liz Miller and Holger Mueller, Mueller and Miller.
The Miller-Mueller Show. Yes, and we'll also get the second half of that interview between Ray Wang and Broadcom SVP Greg Lotko, and undoubtedly the latest and greatest in enterprise technology news. Join us.